Hi, thanks for coming, everybody. I am Manny Silva. I'm head of documentation at Skyflow, a data privacy vault company. I am the creator and maintainer of Doc Detective, an open source toolkit for testing your documentation like engineers test their code. And I am the author of Docs as Tests, a book that talks about that strategy. I'm also a long-time advocate of better documentation practices, as one might expect, given my introduction. Today, I want to talk about a challenge that we all face to one degree or another, and that is how to empower non-writers to contribute to our documentation effectively, because everybody can do it, but whether or not they like to do it is another matter. This isn't just about making life easier for non-writers or for the writers themselves. This is about unlocking the potential of our teams and of our communities and improving our products overall. There's a lot that I'm going to talk about today, so forgive me if I flip through some of the slides a little quick. We only have 30 minutes, and there's going to be a recording, so it's okay. I come from a documentation engineer's perspective at this. So there's a lot that we're going to talk about that's going to involve doc ops, that's going to involve various different things that you can do to improve the contributor experience. But let's jump right in. So this is the reality that most of us face. We build great features, but they go unused because the knowledge of how to use them is trapped in the heads of the people who built them. But there are ways that we can fix this, and we can empower everybody to share their expertise. So we're going to start by understanding the real cost of our current approach. We're going to explore tools and workflows to help us change that, and I'm going to share examples of a few companies that have successfully implemented some of these approaches. Now, the world that we live in now, your senior engineer knows exactly why your API behaves strangely. Your support team has fielded the same question 200 times. Your product manager understands the user journey perfectly from having heard it from users repeatedly. Your QA engineer knows every edge case. These are the people with the most valuable insights into how our products work, and they each have their own nuanced understanding of it. But when it comes to documentation, we often only treat them as knowledge sources, and they don't feel empowered or able to get their information down on the digital page. They want to help, but for them, Git workflows feel like learning a new language. Markdown syntax, any syntax of any markup language, becomes a stumbling block. And style guides might read like legal documents, and a lot of people feel like one wrong move might break the docs. No one likes to break anything. People who are unfamiliar with systems are naturally resistant to mess with them in any capacity. And all of these barriers make it feel like contributing to documentation is a high-stakes endeavor. Non-writers worry about doing it wrong or having their contributions rejected, or worse, being judged on their writing. Everyone who contributes to documentation knows that fear or has known that fear before. Everyone else feels it even more strongly than we do. This leads to a cycle where the people with the most valuable knowledge are the ones who are least likely to contribute. And here's the fundamental problem. We've created systems that make it hard for people to share their knowledge. These aren't lazy people. They want to help. They're very passionate, but we've inadvertently built barriers that make contribution feel risky and overwhelming. The irony is that the people with the most knowledge are the least likely to contribute. And what you see here, these aren't abstract costs. They're real impacts I've seen myself and I've heard about in various different organizations across various different industries. When knowledge can't easily flow into documentation, we pay for it in support overhead, in developer interruptions, and in missed business opportunities. Here's what it actually looks like. A developer ships a feature and forgets to update the docs. Or maybe they, quote, forgot to update the docs. The first user hits the undocumented feature and files a support ticket. The support escalates right back to the developer who explains it to support. More users hit the same issue and support volume grows. Then finally somebody remembers to document it weeks later. If you're lucky, it's weeks. And somebody adds a add docs to the backlog ticket, and then with a little bit of information that they've had over the course of all of these interactions and conversations. And then a writer eventually picks it up again a few weeks later with a lot of context missing, just whatever that one person happened to write down, and they create documentation that is technically accurate but misses the user's mental model. And then the cycle repeats with the next feature. It's miserable. Meanwhile, the developer who built the feature in the first place could have written a draft of a document in 10 minutes. So instead of accepting that documentation will always lag behind, instead of accepting that writers feel like they need to interview, more often interrogate people with the knowledge, and that instead of accepting that independent contributors will always have so many roadblocks, we can systematically remove the barriers that prevent others from contributing. Parts of this solution are simple, parts of it are complex, and how this is implemented in each organization is going to look different. But here are a few problems and potential solutions to lower that barrier of entry, to make it easier for anyone to contribute to the docs, whether they are a PM, whether they're a community member, whether they are an engineer, or maybe it's just the writer and they're having a bad day and they need their life to be a little bit easier. This helps everybody. This is about improving the authoring experience, the original AX before it was agent experience. So barrier number one, Git workflows feel complex. I feel like workflows can be complex sometimes, and this is probably the biggest psychological barrier to anyone who knows of Git but does not know Git. Developers often assume that contributors need the same Git expertise that they have. But modern documentation platforms can completely eliminate this complexity. The fear of breaking something in Git keeps more people from contributing than any other single factor. So what do we do about it? We hide Git because it's not a user requirement. It's an implementation detail. For the less technical, we use platforms that minimize or eliminate Git interaction completely. Like Fern is coming out with a no-code editor with support for MDX components. Mintlify has a drag-and-drop editor with instant previews of their documentation. Gitbook edits like Google Docs, and the Git happens automatically in the background. Redocly now has a WYSIWYG editor with MarkDoc support that integrates into your repos wherever they might live. For the more technical members of our audiences, for our contributors, we can still make it easier. We can minimize the work of setting up local dependencies and get them to their first win quickly. You can enable web editor access, whether it's even something as simple as github.dev, and helping people use that so that they can edit the files directly in the browser. But it also might mean that you can set up full-on cloud development environments using something like dev containers in VS Code, or something like Gitpod or Codespaces. There are a whole bunch of options here so that the user doesn't have to manually install and configure things on their device. This gets people into the editing, into the task, into their contribution faster if we remove the barrier of them having to set up their device. These tools all retain the benefits of version control, history, collaboration, backup, while presenting a nicer, easier editing experience. And contributors can focus on contributing rather than on Git commands. Also, edit this page buttons are like magic. Instead of sending someone off to go hunt for where the documentation source is, if you just have a button that takes them to where they need to go, you're going to get a lot more people interested. Users just click, they make an edit in the familiar experience that we just talked about. They hit submit, and then all the Git complexity happens on the back end. They get a PR that they review. They go from I need to learn Git to I can fix this typo. And yes, there is CI/CD complexity on the back end. That's going to depend, that's going to vary on which tools you so choose. But that little bit of one-time lift to get this set up and configured is going to make your life and your contributors' lives so much easier. Now, barrier number 2. Markup syntax is unfamiliar. Note that I'm saying mark up and not mark down. What scares non-writers is having to learn yet another syntax. If you're using ASCII doc or restructured text or docbook or DITA, it scares them that they need to remember obscure formatting rules and conventions, that they might get indentation or nesting wrong depending on your markup language, that they might break a build with syntax errors, that if you're using an editor-only or expert-only markup language like DITA, that it's imposing. Many organizations choose powerful but complicated markup languages like ASCII doc for their advanced features, and there are times to do that. And while these are great for power users, they create unnecessary barriers for casual contributors. The syntax complexity keeps the subject matter experts, who are not subject matter experts in that markup language, from sharing their knowledge. So what do we do about it? We choose something that's friendly. There is a time and a place when you need the more advanced features like conditional text, complex cross-references. But if your goal is enabling contributions, choose the simplest markup that meets your needs. You can always add the complexity later, but you can't easily remove barriers once they exist. You can go with the WYSIWYG editors so that markup really doesn't matter. But if you have to have direct editing of the markup, you can go with something that's broadly known like Markdown. You can get into ever more complicated things, but remember, every step down that ladder, you're going to reduce contributions. So it's a trade-off. There is no best tool. There's only the tool that's best for your goals and for your team. And everything that I'm saying, this applies for external contributors, people in our communities. This applies to internal contributors in our organization. So this doesn't matter if we're talking open source, closed source. This is the same for everybody. You ever try to get an internal engineer to directly contribute to the docs? You're going to have a hard time unless you help them along and make it easier for them. Now, there are WYSIWYG editors for almost every format. Some of them are web-based, some of them aren't. It depends on the markup that you're working with. But heck, Notion can sync to Git using some complex workflows, but it still can. Gitbook, again, WYSIWYG support. Confluence, technically it's a web editor. A lot of people use it for internal documentation. There you go. But there are also VS Code extensions for ASCII doc, for restructured text. The key is hiding the complexity until contributors are ready for it. If they are ready for it, cool. If they want to get at those more advanced features, let them. But when they're first getting in the door, you need to lower that barrier of entry, make it as easy as possible for people to get started with visual editing and let them choose their comfort level instead of you forcing it on them. And we talked about this a little bit already, but if you truly need complex cross-references, if you truly need multi-channel publishing, if you truly need the exact same content to be single-sourced and included in a website and in a PDF and in a that's going to be viewed digitally versus a PDF that's going to be printed into a book and all of these other possible sources, then please go with ASCII doc, go with DITA, go with whatever tooling you need. Just know that your contribution volume is going to be lower, and that's a trade-off you're making. Barrier number 3, people aren't comfortable with their writing. This is often the most personal barrier. People have internalized a lot of messages from school, or especially if people are trying to write in a language that is not their first, about what makes good versus bad writing. And a lot of people assume that contributing to documentation requires the same polish as published articles. But in reality, clear communication of accurate information beats elegance every time. It's more important to have something than to have nothing at all. And even if the draft isn't clear, that's fine. If the draft isn't, as long as the draft is elegant, there are ways of making that work. And that's the good enough mindset. The biggest mindset shift is helping people understand that contributing to documentation is collaborative. They don't need and shouldn't submit publication-ready prose. They need to capture their knowledge so it can be refined. This is where whoever your contributor is, assuming that there's a technical writer who is maintaining this process, who is helping shepherd the contributions, they're there to help get the prose ready for publication. Rough drafts are not only acceptable, they are valuable, because then the people who are more keyed in to what it takes to get a publication ready can take that information and get it out there and ask the hard questions that the contributor may not have originally thought of. And instead of the writer going out and having to put time on people's calendars and conduct interviews, this inverts things. You have your contributors coming to you with the information that you need. And then you have the opportunity to ask those clarifying questions to get it out the door. Shift the standard from expecting the perfect to expecting the helpful. Draft quality beats no docs. Accurate information trumps elegant prose. Working examples matter more than clear and elegant examples. If it works, you can clarify it after the fact. User success is the only metric that counts. If you don't have docs, you're going to have 0 successful users. If you have pretty but useless docs, you're going to have 0 successful users. If you have a doc that maybe isn't perfect, but it's accurate, cool. Then you start getting successful users. And you need to communicate this explicitly to your potential contributors. First drafts are welcome. We'll polish together. Rough notes are infinitely better than perfect silence. Your knowledge plus our editing equals great docs. But there's more that you can do too. You can provide templates to remove that blank page problem. Because if you have somebody who wants to write something new, but they don't know where to start, then you need to help them. Content frameworks like diataxis or the 7-action documentation model provide the theory to help contributors understand what kind of documentation they want to write in the first place. And then once they understand what each doc type does and they've chosen which one they want to write, then they can use a template, which is going to be your ready-to-use implementation. Pre-built templates for each of the different doc types you've identified for your organization, examples of how to use the templates and how the templates have been used historically so they have something to model it off of. Fill in the blank sections for easy completion. Together, the content frameworks and the templates eliminate both the what should I write and how should I structure it questions. That way your contributors don't get paralyzed. Also, there are a lot of AI tools out there today that can act as a supportive writing partner. I am not saying turn your AI into writing all of your docs for you. That's going to be miserable. And I say that as someone who has developed a lot of AI tooling myself. But a lot of these tools can help contributors feel more confident by catching errors, suggesting structural improvements, providing alternative phrasings so that they can turn in content, they can contribute content that they're more comfortable with, but they still know is technically accurate because they're the ones who can point out if it's not technically accurate. This is especially valuable for people who haven't written much documentation or, again, are not comfortable in the language that they're writing. And tools, this group of tools includes the likes of Writer, of Dosu, of docs.dev. There are a whole bunch more. And then again, subject matter expertise is better than writing polish. Polish those rough drafts into publishable docs, but you need those rough drafts to be rough. You do not want anyone to assume that they need perfection. As long as there is someone there to help with the edits, to ensure consistency across the doc sets, to handle whatever complex formatting or cross references or whatever other advanced features you've got. Just make sure your contributors are as comfortable contributing as you can make them. And again, focus on that collaboration model. This is crucial when we should not be asking our SMEs to become professional writers. We're asking them to share their expertise in whatever form they can that we can then refine. The knowledge transfer is the hardest part. That's what this whole presentation is about, making it easier for them. Now, next barrier. Ooh, I only got 10 minutes left. I'm going to go a little faster. Style guides. Who feels like they enjoy reading a style guide? Raise your hand. Yeah? Okay, we got a few of us weirdos here. Great. But for people who have not pored over these style guides, how are they supposed to know when to use click versus select versus choose? How are they supposed to remember the preferences of the organization for capitalization and punctuation and tone? They're going to have fear of getting rejected for style violations. They shouldn't have to understand audience-specific language guidelines. And these things can be dense and big and scary. So don't make them read them. Automate prose linting. Implement tooling that helps people automatically adhere to the style. Prioritize helping the contributor automatically instead of forcing them to study first. And prose linting tools like Veil, it is by far the most used one, can help ensure consistent terminology enforcement. All caps API versus capital A lowercase pi versus API all lowercase. Grammar punctuation checking, plain language rule enforcement, brand voice. And the great thing is that just like any other linter, these integrate great with CI/CD pipelines. And they integrate directly into IDEs. So you can get immediate feedback before your contributor ever submits anything. They're great. But also, there are some tools that can help with this stage of the editing flow. Like Hyperlint is one example that can take plain language style guidance, or it can read the results of your Veil rule sets and then suggest edits. But there are others that, again, they're aware of the surrounding context. They can help you identify better phrasing and tone and all of that. Again, it's just about making it user-friendly. You're not expecting perfection. You're going to edit this anyways, but you're trying to remove those barriers for contribution, remove the mental barriers for contribution. Eckline is another tool that can do something similar. And so here we shift the conversation from did you follow the style guide to is this information accurate enough to be helpful? Barrier number 5. The review process feels intimidating. Review anxiety is real and it is rational. People shouldn't have to worry about wasting reviewers' time or don't want to feel like they're being judged for the quality of their writing. And the solution isn't to eliminate reviews, but it's to make them predictable and helpful and clearly defined. So you need to define clear entry and exit criteria, what contributors need before they can contribute anything, what reviewers check for before they can approve any contributions, and what doesn't matter. That last one is more important than you think. One way to do it is establish organizational CLAs. And they're not just about speed, they're about respect. They're about predictability. When contributors know that their work will be reviewed promptly and fairly, they're way more likely to contribute. The SLA also protects reviewers by setting clear expectations about what constitutes reasonable feedback and what the turnaround times are going to be. And you can also have different SLAs based on the priority of the contribution. You need to design your reviews to encourage, not to discourage. When you give feedback, make it helpful. Give the hard feedback, but also praise the things that are working well. Focus on coaching and not gatekeeping. And if you have the bandwidth for it, track the review quality, track contributor satisfaction through surveys, track time from submission to approval, and see as you implement these different processes if they improve with time. And you can give people different guidelines based on the kinds of contributions that they're trying to do. A quick fix like a typo is going to have way different expectations than a major contribution like a reorganization. Barrier 6, they can't verify the accuracy of it. They wrote it, and they know it's going to be good. That is good today, but how can they be certain that it's going to be good tomorrow? This is a really legitimate concern that a lot of contributors have, especially the more technical ones who know that there are upcoming changes to a product or a project or a feature. The solution is not to lower your standards. The solution is to automatically verify the documentation content so that contributors can be confident today before they submit, and they can be confident about it tomorrow when it's still live. And one way we can do this is automated content validation with docs as tests, which is a way of literally testing your documentation just like engineers test their code. I'm not going to dive too deep into it. I wrote a book on it. If you're curious, come chat with me after. But what this does is it tests that UI procedures, API procedures, CLI procedures, SDK procedures work as written against the current product interfaces. That way, you don't have to worry about tickets that are just, oh, hey, this broke, and then somebody having to go in and contribute, because you know when it breaks and you can fix it proactively. And you can build it into your contribution workflows so that anytime a PR is raised, you automatically run all of your tests to see if the contribution accidentally broke anything or not. And as with everything else, you start simple, you scale to your complexity that you eventually want to reach, and you make it contributor friendly the whole way through. Now, the last barrier, the time investment seems too high. Oh goodness, it's going to take me forever to write these docs. It's going to take forever to make anything happen. The reviews are going to take so long. But even the really small fixes that only take a few minutes can save hours of frustration. And this is when we create those multiple contribution pathways that we just talked about on the other slide. Set the expectations for what somebody can do in 2 minutes for a small fix versus what somebody might be able to do in a half an hour versus what it's reasonably going to take to write a whole new doc. Guess what? It's going to be more than an hour versus something that's much larger, and that also helps identify when they need to pull in the technical writers, when they need to pull in the experts. And you tighten the feedback loop by doing everything we've already talked about, by giving automated feedback, whether it's through linters, whether it's through AI-based tooling, whether it's through automated testing or anything else. The sooner you can get feedback to your contributors, especially if it's even within the IDE before they submit anything, the higher quality contributions you're going to get, and the more confident your contributors are going to be in what they're sending you. And tell people the impact of their contributions. Hey, your 5-minute typo fixed 47 support tickets that we came in last month, so we won't get another 47 this month. Oh, hey, adding that code example made it so that we had 60% greater success rate through the document, through that tutorial, that sort of thing. When you actually close that feedback loop and you tell people what they've done to improve things, they are way more motivated. And then give them a head start. There's a new breed of AI tooling that can monitor code changes in PRs and then look at your docs repo and then suggest changes to the docs that might be necessary. Tools like promptless or docs.dev. And what this does is it reduces the number of surface areas that your contributors feel like they need to address. And if your engineers are happy because the tooling did it for them, guess what? They're going to be more likely to contribute to more important and higher priority things. Now, I have a minute. So we talked about all that. By implementing these things, we make life easier overall for our contributors. And there are some groups who have had great success with this. One of them is GitLab. Developers write docs they have docs workflow that is identical to their code workflow. They use automated CI/CD pipelines really well. They have really, really clear contribution guidelines and processes. And so that helps their developers and external contributors write drafts alongside their code to help the tech writers focus on strategy and not chasing updates. Grafana. I see you. They have, I have the wrong notes here. Forgive me. But Grafana has a writer's toolkit that they have to help contributors understand what they need to do, what they can do, the understanding behind the structure of the documentation so that everyone goes in knowing exactly how to go about editing content there. There's also Microsoft, which goes and oh no okay there's Microsoft, which goes and talks. They have web-based editors with GitHub. They've got VS Code extensions specifically framed around writing Markdown for their Learn help systems that help writers do it easier, help any contributors do it easier. And then we've also got Skyflow, which, again, I can talk about more. I'm already running over, but we use linters. We use templates that I've created from the Good Docs project. Shout out. They're awesome. Use them. We could be better about our internal process docs. I won't lie. But like I built an AI toolkit internally to help anyone inside the entirety of the company draft documentation according to our standards, templates, and guidelines. And it has been phenomenal. Now, first, when you're getting started, just start with the easy stuff. Lay a good foundation. Make sure you have good docs in the first place to start with, but then start laying the tools, create your templates, and get really, really basic linters in place, and then upgrade to the next level of complexity once you've tested out I am ahead. I was looking at the wrong one. Forgive me. You got to start small. But once you have that low effort, immediate impact tooling in place, then you can move to the low or no code editors, to the AI augmented authoring, to content validation through automated tools. And then you can, if that's working out for you, awesome, you can still take it further and do custom veil rule sets and really dive deep into the doc ops and automation flows. And as far as where to go, just start where people are. Use the tools that your contributors are already familiar with. Don't try to force anything new on them if you can adapt the tools that they already have, and celebrate contributions from everybody. It's okay if it's just a typo fix instead of a full guide, but you should celebrate both. And then get feedback from your contributors and use that to better inform the processes that you have in place. This isn't a 0 to 1 thing. It's not a binary. It is an adventure. It is a gradual change. And so, yeah, everybody has room for improvement. Guess what? We're human. That's okay. But identify the next step that you can do to improve your contribution processes. And let's lower those barriers together. I really, really, really strongly believe that empowering non-writers to contribute is one of the most impactful things we can do to improve our docs. Because the more information we have, the more eyes we have on the docs, the more people we have caring about the quality of our documentation, the better our docs are going to get. Whether those people are external, whether they're internal, whether you're working on external docs, internal docs, it doesn't matter. Help the people who want to help you. Thank you for joining me today. I think we have a few minutes left for questions. So the question was for the AI tooling and content validation tools that I mentioned, are any of them open source that people can contribute to? The answer to the first one, for the AI assisted tooling, unfortunately, no. That is internal to my workplace. But for the content validation, yes, that is open source. That is Doc Detective. And it is 100% open source. I am looking for contributions of all stripes, whether it is docs, whether it is engineering, whether it is design, and anything else under the sun. So yes, 100% open source. Anybody else?
You're talking about reducing the barriers to entry for people that I normally assume are comfortable with tools like it. I mean, have you had success with implementing WYSIWYG tools for PMs who should be get knowledgeable?
So the question was, many of the types of folks that I was speaking to Many assume should already know Git, and have I had success with WYSIWYG tools enabling folks who aren't comfortable with Git. I would also assume that PMs might be comfortable with Git, or should be comfortable with Git. I have run into those who are not, and more often than I've ever expected. And yes, I have PMs who refuse to write in Markdown and write everything in Google Docs and then copy it out into Markdown and get lost when they're in the GitHub UIs. And it's not just PMs and engineers. I'm talking about, I get contributions from sales folks. I get contributions from customer support folks who are not comfortable in Markdown because they're in their CMSs. I get contributions from marketing folks who I certainly don't expect to be comfortable with Git, and everybody in between. So as far as have I had success with WYSIWYG editors, I'm moving toward a platform that has WYSIWYG editors right now. Right now, they are using the WYSIWYG editors. I prefer them not to. So yes, but not in the way I would like to date. But I'm hoping to change that in the very near future. Cool. And again, just some of the other tools that I mentioned. There's, yes, Doc Detective, but Hyperlint for style guide editing, Eckline for style guide editing, Promptless for automatic docs updates, docs.dev for that, as well as content drafting. There's a good docs project who has all of their templates. Oh, question. Yes. So the question is, how do you assess if your docs are doing what they're supposed to do, and how do you measure that? Unfortunately, that is a topic deep enough to merit a few talks, but it is largely subjective, to be honest. It depends on what you're trying to measure, who your audience is, and what goals they need, and whether or not you're meeting their needs. If you can identify a conversion, to use a marketing term, if you can identify the specific tasks you need your audience to succeed at, and then you can find a way to measure that, that is the only thing that matters. User success is what matters. Frankly, and I know that there are going to be some people maybe within this room that very strongly disagree with this next statement, but it doesn't matter if your organization is atrocious. It doesn't matter if your docs are elegant. It doesn't even matter if they look good. It matters if your users are successful. Everything else is secondary, because you might have beautiful docs, but if your users can't use them, if they can't succeed with your product, guess what? They won't be your users for long. There are no standardized tools that I am aware of that could do a, yes, this is good, no, this isn't, because again, it all depends on priority. Like for me, if my content isn't accurate, it's useless. So for me, testing it and making sure it's accurate and having verifiable proof that it's accurate is really high priority. But I know other writers where they don't prioritize that as high. They prioritize more the organization and the findability or search results for SEO or all manner of other things. And then you get into things like Flesch-Kincaid reading scores and other automatically calculated metrics, and those can be useful to informing certain things, but they're ultimately not what really they don't identify, or here's a better word, they don't correlate to user success. Now, there are other tools like Eckline actually does have an overall document quality score that they have. But again, that's their metric, not necessarily yours. Cool. All right, cool. Thank you, everybody. Pleasure having you here.